I'm embarrassed to call you my grandson." The room went quiet. My brother Daniel leaned back in his chair with a grin that made my stomach tighten. If you enjoy stories where the truth always catches up with the people who deserve it, subscribe to The Last Receipt. This one started with a family calling me a failure and ended with a safe that changed every one of our lives. I looked around the dining room. Nobody corrected him. Not my aunt, not my cousins, not even my mother. The crystal glasses reflected the candlelight, while expensive silverware rested neatly beside untouched plates. The only sound was the ticking of Grandpa William's grandfather clock. Then Daniel laughed. "Come on, everyone was thinking it." Several people smiled into their wine. My throat tightened. I was 31 years old, wearing the only suit I owned, standing in the house where I'd spent every summer as a kid. Somehow I still felt 12. I forced a smile. "Happy birthday, Grandpa." Grandpa William nodded once. "Thank you, Ethan." His voice was calm. Too calm. He didn't defend me. That hurt more than Daniel's words. Aunt Rebecca folded her napkin with slow, careful movements. "You know Daniel doesn't mean any harm." "I usually don't," Daniel said. "But facts aren't insults." He lifted his glass. "Here's to Grandpa." "And here's hoping one of us actually keeps the Carter legacy alive." Several cousins chuckled. He wasn't finished. Obviously, I'm not talking about Ethan. The laughter came louder. I felt heat climb into my face. I reached for my water. The glass felt icy against my fingers. It steadied the shaking just enough that no one noticed. Or maybe they noticed. Maybe they simply didn't care. Grandpa looked from face to face. He stayed silent. That silence pressed against my chest harder than any insult. Rebecca smiled with fake sympathy. Ethan has always taken a different path. Daniel shrugged. Different? He laughed again. He quit his corporate job. I resigned. You got fired. I resigned. So you say. My cousin Olivia leaned forward. I heard your business never made money. It paid every bill, but not enough to buy a house. I never said I wanted one. Daniel grinned. See? He looked around the table. Excuses. I inhaled slowly. The smell of roasted beef and rosemary suddenly made me feel sick. Grandpa quietly cut another piece of steak. He still said nothing. Mother cleared her throat. Maybe we should change the subject. Daniel smiled politely. I am. He looked straight at me. I'm talking about responsibility. I met his eyes. You've never asked me what actually happened. I don't need to. You've heard one side. The successful side. The room laughed again. I reached into my jacket pocket. Without anyone noticing, I opened the voice recorder on my phone. The screen went dark again. If nobody believed me later, at least I'd have tonight. Rebecca sighed dramatically. We've all tried helping Ethan. When? She blinked. What? When did you help me? Daniel answered before she could. We offered advice. You offered criticism. Same thing. No. He leaned back. See? That's why you'll never succeed. I looked toward Grandpa. He finally raised his eyes. For 1 second. I thought he was about to stop this. Instead, he simply drank from his glass. The disappointment settled like a stone inside my chest. I remembered being 10 years old. Grandpa teaching me to repair an old fishing reel in this very dining room after everyone else had gone outside. He'd smiled then. Patience always reveals character. I'd believed him. Tonight, I wasn't so sure anymore. Dinner continued. People talked about promotions, vacation homes, luxury cars, investment portfolios. Every conversation somehow circled back to me. Olivia smiled sweetly. Ethan, are you still renting? Yes, Daniel whistled. At your age? I answered calmly. I like financial flexibility. He laughed. Translation? He can't afford anything else. Rebecca touched my arm. You know we're only worried about you. Her hand felt cold through my sleeve. I appreciate the concern. I don't think you do. I just don't confuse concern with humiliation. Her smile disappeared for half a second. Then it returned. Oh, sweetheart. That word always meant trouble. We're family. I nodded. I know. Families tell the truth. So do recordings. Daniel frowned. What? I smiled slightly. Nothing. He studied me. For the first time that evening. He looked uncertain. Only for a second. Then he laughed again. You've always been dramatic. I've always remembered details. The room grew quieter. Grandpa finally spoke. Dessert. Everyone relaxed immediately. The tension broke. Conversation shifted toward cake and coffee. While everyone stood to help the staff clear the table, my phone vibrated. A bank alert. Not mine. Grandpa's joint notification. Months earlier, he'd asked me to help him set up emergency alerts because he hated dealing with smartphone settings. I glanced down. A large transfer request had been initiated. My heartbeat quickened. The amount wasn't completed, only pending. I looked across the room. Rebecca stood beside Grandpa's study door. She quickly slipped something into her purse. Then she noticed me watching. She smiled. Too quickly. Too brightly. Everything all right, Ethan? I locked my phone. Fine. She held my gaze. Longer than necessary. Then she walked away. I quietly opened the banking app. The request originated less than 5 minutes ago. From inside the house. I took a screenshot. Then another. I emailed both to myself immediately. Agency came naturally when people underestimated you. Especially after years of being dismissed. While everyone gathered around Grandpa's enormous birthday cake, another notification appeared. An email. From Daniel. Not sent to me. Accidentally copied during an old family thread. The subject line caught my attention. Estate planning, final discussion before Sunday. The attachment had been removed. Interesting. I forwarded the email to my personal account before anyone could recall it. Another receipt. Another question. The candles were lit. Everyone gathered around Grandpa. 82, Daniel announced proudly. What an incredible life. Everyone applauded. Grandpa blew out the candles. No smile followed. Instead, he slowly looked at every face surrounding him. One by one. When his eyes reached mine, they stayed there. Long enough for me to notice something. Regret. Not disappointment. Regret. People began eating cake. Conversations filled the room again. Music started softly in the background. The noise gave everyone permission to pretend dinner had never happened. Social pressure worked like that. If enough people ignored cruelty, it somehow became acceptable. I stepped outside onto the back porch. Cool evening air filled my lungs. The tightness in my chest eased a little. The old wooden swing still hung from the oak tree. I remembered sitting there with Grandpa after Grandma died. Neither of us had spoken much. We hadn't needed to. The back door opened. I expected Daniel. Instead, Grandpa stepped outside alone. He closed the door behind him. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Crickets chirped across the dark lawn. Finally, he said quietly, "Did you record dinner?" I stared at him. "Yes." "Good." I blinked. "You knew?" "I know far more than everyone inside believes." My heartbeat quickened. He reached into his pocket and handed me an old brass key. It felt heavy in my palm. Come back tomorrow morning. Why? Before anyone else arrives. I looked at the key. What does it open? He smiled for the first time all night. My safe. I looked back toward the glowing windows where laughter echoed through the house. The family thinks I'm the failure. Grandpa's expression hardened. That's exactly what they needed you to believe. Then he walked back inside, leaving me alone beneath the porch light, holding a key that suddenly felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. The brass key stayed in my hand the entire drive home. Every time I stopped at a traffic light, I glanced at it again. Grandpa had never been a dramatic man. If he gave someone a key, it meant something. I barely slept. Questions kept circling through my mind. Why had he stayed silent? Why had he watched everyone humiliate me? And why did he suddenly trust me with a safe nobody else seemed to know about? By 6:30 the next morning, I was already pulling into the long gravel driveway. Morning fog covered the lawn. The old stone house looked quieter than I'd ever seen it. No luxury cars. No family. Just Grandpa's pickup sitting beside the garage. I walked to the front door. Before I could knock, it opened. I was wondering if you'd be early. Grandpa stepped aside. I wasn't going to be late. I know. His voice sounded tired. Not weak. Just heavy. I followed him inside. The house smelled like fresh coffee and old leather. That scent instantly carried me back to childhood Saturdays. Grandpa repairing clocks. Me sitting on the floor pretending to help. Back then, nobody called me a failure. Back then, family felt simple. Grandpa led me toward his study. Unlike the rest of the house, this room had barely changed in 40 years. Dark wooden shelves, leather-bound books, a fireplace covered with family photographs. One picture caught my attention. Me, age 11, holding my first fishing rod. Grandpa smiled in that picture. I'd almost forgotten that smile. He noticed me looking. You remember that trip? I caught one fish. You caught patience. I smiled despite everything. You always said strange things. They made sense later. He closed the study door. Then he locked it. The click echoed through the room. He walked toward an enormous painting hanging over the fireplace. It showed a quiet lake at sunrise. He lifted it carefully. Behind it, a steel safe was built into the wall. I stared. I never knew this was here. Very few people do. He looked at the brass key in my hand. Go ahead. I stepped forward. The key slid into the lock perfectly. My fingers hesitated. Open it. I turned the key. The locking mechanism clicked. Heavy. Solid. Old. I pulled the door open. Then I frowned. It wasn't full of cash. No stacks of gold. No jewelry. Only neat rows of folders. Old notebooks. Several envelopes. A small metal box. And what looked like dozens of flash drives. I looked back at Grandpa. I don't understand. Money isn't the valuable thing inside. Then what is? He slowly walked beside me. The truth. I blinked. The truth? He nodded. 4 years. I looked inside again. What truth? The kind people spend their lives hiding. Silence settled over the room. I reached toward one folder. He gently stopped my hand. Not yet. You brought me here. I did. So why can't I see? Because timing matters. He closed the safe again. I felt frustration rise. You expect me to wait? I expect you to trust me. I looked at him. I've trusted you my whole life. I know. His shoulders dropped slightly. And that's exactly why I couldn't lose you. I frowned. Lose me? They've spent years convincing you that you're worth less than them. His words landed harder than I expected. I looked away. I almost believed them. I know. He knew. That somehow hurt even more. He poured 2 cups of coffee. Steam rose between us. He handed one to me. The mug felt warm against my cold hands. I need your help. You already have it. I haven't explained anything. You wouldn't ask unless it mattered. For the first time since yesterday. He smiled. That's why you're here instead of everyone else. I took a sip. So tell me. He stared into his coffee. Someone has been stealing from me. The room became perfectly still. What? 4 years. I shook my head. No. I wish that weren't true. Who? I don't know everything. You suspect someone? Yes. Who? He looked toward the closed safe. I'm not ready to say. I stood. Then let's call the police. No. What? Not yet. They're stealing from you. They're stealing much more than money. I frowned. What does that mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, Did you receive any alerts last night? I hesitated. Yes. What did you do? I took screenshots. I forwarded them to myself. I saved everything. He nodded slowly. Good. You expected that too? I hoped you would. You planned this? I planned for honesty. Before I could ask another question, someone knocked loudly on the study door. 3 quick knocks. Then the handle turned. Locked. Rebecca's voice came through. Dad? Grandpa answered calmly. 1 minute. The knocking stopped. She didn't leave. We could hear her standing outside, listening. Grandpa leaned toward me. Quietly. Say nothing. A moment later, he unlocked the door. Rebecca entered carrying a tray with pastries. Oh, she smiled. I didn't realize Ethan was here. You do now. She laughed lightly. I only wanted to bring breakfast. Her eyes immediately drifted toward the painting, toward the safe. Just for a second. Then back to Grandpa. You shouldn't stay locked in here. I'm comfortable. She looked at me. Did Dad ask you to help with technology again? He asked me to visit. That's nice. She set the tray down. Dad, your doctor said stress affects memory. Grandpa calmly buttered a piece of toast. I remember. Rebecca smiled. Exactly. She turned toward me. You know, he's becoming forgetful. Grandpa didn't react. He sometimes imagines problems that aren't really there. I looked at her. What kind of problems? She shrugged. Oh, finances. He keeps thinking accounts are wrong. Grandpa finally looked up. My accounts are wrong. She laughed. They're perfectly fine. I watched her carefully. Her smile never reached her eyes. She continued. You know how aging works. Grandpa answered quietly. I know exactly how aging works. She ignored him. Ethan. She lowered her voice. If Dad starts talking about people stealing from him. She gave me a sympathetic smile. Just reassure him. I felt my jaw tighten. You think he's confused? I think he's vulnerable. Grandpa folded his napkin. I think this conversation is over. Rebecca looked surprised. I was only trying to help. No. His voice stayed calm. You were trying to manage. Her smile disappeared. Only briefly. Then it returned. Of course. She kissed Grandpa's forehead. I'll see you later. She paused at the door. Oh. She looked directly at me. I wouldn't fill his head with unnecessary worries. Then she walked away. The door closed. Silence returned. Grandpa slowly exhaled. Did you notice? What? She never asked why you were here. I thought back. You're right. She already assumed. Assumed what? That I trusted you. He walked back to the safe. They're becoming nervous. My heartbeat picked up again. You think Rebecca knows about this? I think everyone knows part of the story. Everyone. Not the same part. He opened a drawer and removed several bank statements. Take these. I looked through them. Several transfers were highlighted. Different dates. Different amounts. But the destination account looked familiar. I've seen this account before. You have. Where? He looked at me. Last night's bank alert. A chill ran through my body. It matches. Exactly. I pulled out my phone. The screenshots were still there. I compared the numbers. They matched perfectly. Someone had been moving money to the same account again and again. Not once. Not twice. For years. I looked up. This isn't random. No. This is planned. Very. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. What do you want me to do? He answered without hesitation. Activate permanent alerts on every account. I can do that. And schedule a full financial backup. I'll start today. And don't tell anyone. I won't. He nodded once. Good. I logged into the accounts with his permission. Within minutes, every withdrawal, transfer, password change, and login attempt would send alerts to both of us. I also downloaded complete account histories to an encrypted drive. Another receipt. Another layer of protection. When I finished, Grandpa closed the laptop. In 3 days, he looked toward the safe again. Everyone will come back here. For what? I invited the whole family. I frowned. Another birthday celebration? No. His eyes hardened. A family meeting. What are you going to tell them? He rested his hand on the safe door. The truth. I looked at the locked steel door. For the first time, I realized the safe wasn't protecting secrets. It was protecting the moment those secrets would finally be impossible to deny. 3 days passed slower than the previous 10 years. Every phone call felt suspicious. Every text message carried a different tone. The insults had stopped. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it made me nervous. People who suddenly stop attacking usually start pretending. Daniel called first. His voice sounded almost cheerful. Hey, little brother. I frowned. He hadn't called me that since high school. What do you want? I can't check on my brother. You've never checked on me. A small laugh came through the phone. Maybe I've been busy. I noticed. He sighed. Look, I think dinner got out of hand. It did. I don't want hard feelings. You started them. I know. That surprised me. Then he added, We're family. There it was. The first layer of fake concern. I leaned back in my chair. What changed? What do you mean? You spent years telling everyone I'm a disappointment. I never said disappointment. You called me the family failure. Silence. Then, I was joking. No. You took it personally. Because it was personal. He cleared his throat. Let's move on. I'm comfortable where we are. His tone cooled slightly. I'd hate for one bad dinner to ruin everything. It wasn't one dinner. Another pause. I'll see you Sunday. He ended the call. I stared at my phone. He hadn't apologized. He'd simply tried to erase history. I opened the voice memo from Grandpa's birthday dinner. I listened again. Every word. Every laugh. Every insult. Then I saved another backup. 3 copies now existed. Nobody would rewrite that night. Less than an hour later, Olivia texted me. Hope you're doing okay. That alone felt unusual. I answered. I'm fine. She replied almost immediately. Daniel feels terrible. I smiled. That wasn't concern. That was damage control. I typed back. Then he should. No answer came. Later that afternoon, my mother called. Ethan? Hi, Mom. Her voice sounded hesitant. I've been thinking. About? Dinner. I waited. You know your brother doesn't always choose the right words. No. He has a big personality. He has a cruel one. She sighed softly. I wish everyone got along. So do I. Another silence settled between us. Finally, she asked, Have you been visiting Grandpa? The question came too casually. Why? He mentioned seeing you. Yes. What did you two talk about? I looked out my apartment window. Rain tapped gently against the glass. We talked. About what? Fishing. That wasn't entirely false. She laughed nervously. Nothing else? No. She sounded disappointed. I see. Before hanging up, she quietly said, Your aunt seems worried. I frowned. Worry about what? I don't really know. Neither did she. Or at least, not yet. Sunday morning arrived. The Carter estate filled with expensive cars again. Everything looked polished. Perfect. Like families in holiday advertisements. Inside, nothing had changed. Daniel greeted me first. He actually smiled. There he is. I nodded. Morning. He patted my shoulder. I've been thinking. I know. We should put old arguments behind us. I looked directly into his eyes. Which ones? He blinked. What? The ones you started yesterday? Or the ones you've been repeating for 10 years? His smile tightened. No need to keep score. I didn't. I kept records. His hand slipped off my shoulder. For the first time, he looked uncomfortable. Rebecca approached carrying fresh flowers. Ethan. Rebecca. She smiled warmly. I brought your favorite pie. You don't know my favorite pie. Her smile froze, then returned. Oh, I thought. No. Daniel laughed awkwardly. See? He looked at Rebecca. I told you he still holds grudges. I answered calmly. I hold memories. Big difference. People nearby heard me. Nobody laughed this time. Inside the living room, everyone gathered around coffee. Small talk floated through the house. Stocks. Vacation plans. Golf. Anything except Grandpa's meeting. My cousin Mark finally walked over. Unlike everyone else, he looked uncomfortable. Can we talk? Sure. We stepped onto the back porch. Cool air brushed against my face. Mark folded his arms. I need to ask something. Go ahead. Did Grandpa really ask you to help him? Yes. Mark looked down. I figured. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. He rubbed the back of his neck. Rebecca's been asking everyone if they've talked to Grandpa. Why? I don't know. He hesitated. Actually, he looked toward the house. I don't think that's true. What do you mean? I think she knows something's wrong. Why? Because she asked me what Grandpa keeps in his study. I stayed quiet. Mark continued. I told her I had no idea. You didn't. I honestly don't. He looked embarrassed. I've never seen her this nervous. That was new. Before I could answer, Rebecca opened the porch door. There you two are. She smiled brightly. Grandpa's looking for everyone. Mark nodded. We're coming. She looked at me. Ethan. Her voice softened. I hope you know nobody wants conflict today. I don't either. She looked relieved. Good. Then she added, This family has sacrificed a lot for you. I stared at her. My father helped you after college. He loaned me money. He believed in you. I repaid every dollar. She blinked. That's not the point. It actually is. She laughed quietly. You always focus on technicalities. No, I focus on facts. Her smile faded, only slightly. Then she walked away. Mark watched her leave. That was strange. It was. You really paid Grandpa back? Every cent. I didn't know that. Most people don't. He looked thoughtful. I always heard he forgave the loan. There wasn't anything to forgive. Mark frowned. That's not what everyone says. My throat suddenly felt dry. What does everyone say? That Grandpa carried you. I looked toward the house. There it was. Another lie. Small, simple, effective. Years of repetition had turned fiction into family history. I opened my phone. Within seconds, I found the old email chain. Loan agreement. Payment confirmations. Final receipt. All dated. All signed. I handed the phone to Mark. He slowly read every page. His eyebrows lifted. You really paid everything. I told you. He looked stunned. Why would people say otherwise? I've been asking myself that for years. He handed the phone back. He stopped. I owe you an apology. I nodded. For what? I believe them. His honesty surprised me. I never checked. You weren't the only one. He looked genuinely ashamed. I should have. That was the first shift. Someone had finally doubted the story. Inside the house, Grandpa's old grandfather clock struck noon. Everyone gathered in the living room. Grandpa entered wearing his navy blazer. His posture remained straight. His eyes swept across every face. Daniel smiled confidently. Rebecca looked relaxed again. Olivia whispered something that made Daniel grin. They still believed they controlled the story. Grandpa folded his hands. Thank you all for coming. Nobody interrupted. I've spent several years thinking about legacy. Daniel nodded eagerly. Rebecca smiled. Grandpa continued. Not money. Not property. Character. Daniel laughed softly. We've all learned a lot from you. Grandpa looked directly at him. Some more than others. The room fell quiet. He continued. Before we discuss anything important, he turned toward me. Ethan. Yes. Would you bring the blue folder from my study? Every eye in the room turned toward me. Rebecca's smile disappeared. Daniel frowned. Why, Ethan? Grandpa answered without looking away from me. Because I trust him. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. I walked toward the study. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I heard voices behind me. They thought I was too far away. Rebecca whispered sharply. This wasn't supposed to happen. Daniel answered just as quietly. Relax. What if he knows? He doesn't. What about the documents? I handled it. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I quietly pulled out my phone. Voice recorder. One tap. Recording. Their footsteps approached. I slipped into the study before they reached the hallway. The blue folder rested exactly where Grandpa said it would. Beside it sat the safe. Locked. Silent. Waiting. I picked up the folder. Then noticed another envelope underneath. Written in Grandpa's careful handwriting were 5 simple words. Open only after today's meeting. I left it exactly where it was. When I returned to the living room, everyone looked perfectly calm again. As if no whispered conversation had ever happened. I handed Grandpa the blue folder. He opened it slowly, then looked around the room. I've listened to many stories about Ethan over the years. Daniel smiled confidently. So have we. Grandpa nodded once. That's exactly the problem. The room became still. Every heartbeat in my chest seemed louder than the grandfather clock. And for the first time, I realized Grandpa hadn't been collecting money. He'd been collecting contradictions. Grandpa rested the blue folder on his lap. Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for a coffee cup. The silence carried more weight than any argument we'd had. Then Grandpa closed the folder again. Not today. Daniel frowned. I thought this meeting was about your estate. It is. So why stop now? Grandpa smiled faintly. Because I'm still deciding who deserves to hear everything. Rebecca forced a laugh. Dad, you're making everyone nervous. Good. His answer came so quickly that her smile disappeared. He stood. Ethan. Yes. Walk with me. Without another word, he headed toward the study. I followed. Behind us, I heard chairs scrape across the hardwood floor. Daniel started to stand. Grandpa looked over his shoulder. Everyone else stays here. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. No one argued. Once the study door closed behind us, Grandpa locked it again. The familiar click echoed through the room. He walked to the safe. This time, he looked at me. You may look. He opened the steel door. Rows of folders stared back at me. Each one had a year written neatly across the tab. All the way to the current year. I reached for the oldest folder. Inside were bank statements, canceled checks, property records. Everything organized with unbelievable precision. My heartbeat quickened. You kept all of this? I kept everything. I turned another page. The handwriting on one transfer authorization caught my eye. Something felt wrong. I compared it with Grandpa's signature on another document. The letters looked similar. Too similar. They copied your signature. Grandpa nodded. Keep going. I laid both papers side by side on the desk. The differences became obvious. The curve in the W. The length of the final stroke. Tiny details. But impossible to ignore once you saw them. This one's forged. Yes. Who did it? I wanted someone else to notice before I said the name. I swallowed. How many are there? More than 30. The number hit me like a punch. 30? Across nearly 10 years. I slowly turned more pages. Every folder contained another forged signature. Another unexplained transfer. Another missing investment. This wasn't one mistake. It was a system. I rubbed my forehead. I can't believe nobody saw this. They didn't want to. His words settled heavily. People often miss what they're afraid to confront. I kept reading. One account number appeared again. The same account from my screenshots. The same account from the bank alerts. It connected everything. My pulse pounded against my neck. This account received almost every transfer. Correct. Did the bank investigate? I never reported it. I looked up. Why? Because I wasn't finished learning. I frowned. Learning what? Who believed they were untouchable? He opened another folder. Instead of financial records, it held handwritten notes. Each page listed dates, conversations, promises, contradictions. You documented family dinners? I documented behavior. He handed me one notebook. Read page 23. I opened it. The date was 6 years earlier. A family barbecue. Daniel had volunteered to help Grandpa organize paperwork. The next day's entry noted that 2 investment documents had disappeared. Another page. Rebecca insisted Grandpa simplify his finances because he was forgetting things. Another missing transfer appeared 2 weeks later. The pattern was impossible to ignore. They had been preparing this for years. Grandpa nodded. They understood something. What? People question documents. He paused. They rarely question repetition. The sentence stayed with me. Every family gathering, every joke, every story. They'd repeated the same message. Ethan is irresponsible. Ethan wastes money. Ethan needed rescuing. Eventually, even I believed pieces of it. I sat down heavily. For the first time since this started, fear replaced anger. Not fear of losing money. Fear that an entire decade of my life had been shaped by deliberate lies. I remembered turning down a business partnership because Daniel told me nobody trusted my judgment. I remembered relatives avoiding financial conversations around me. I remembered believing maybe they were right. I closed my eyes. I wasted years doubting myself. Grandpa's voice softened. No. You survived years of manipulation. I looked away. I should have seen it. You were never supposed to. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking clock filled the room. Finally, I stood again. I'm done feeling ashamed. He smiled. I know. Just then another notification buzzed across my phone. A login attempt. One of Grandpa's accounts. Unauthorized. Blocked automatically because of the security alerts we installed. I held up the screen. They're trying again. Grandpa glanced at it calmly. They've realized something changed. I immediately saved another screenshot. Then exported the security log. Another receipt. Another timestamp. They're getting desperate. No. Grandpa looked toward the living room. They're getting careless. A knock interrupted us. This time it was softer. Ethan? It was my mother. May I come in? Grandpa unlocked the door. She stepped inside slowly. Her eyes landed on the stacks of paperwork spread across the desk. She looked confused. I didn't know. She stopped. What is all this? Grandpa answered first. Evidence. She laughed nervously. Evidence of what? Things I should have addressed years ago. She looked at me. Ethan? I handed her 2 documents. One genuine signature. One forged. Compare them. She studied both pages. At first she frowned. Then her expression changed. She held them closer to the light. Her breathing slowed. These? She looked at Grandpa. These aren't the same. No. They've been altered. Yes. She looked back at me. Who did this? Grandpa remained silent. She swallowed. No. Her voice trembled. No one in this family would. She couldn't finish. Not because she didn't want to. Because the proof sat in her hands. She carefully placed the papers back on the desk. I need time. Grandpa nodded. I expected that. She looked exhausted. I've defended everyone for years. I know. What if I was wrong? Grandpa answered gently. Then today is the first day you can be right. Tears filled her eyes. She quietly left the room. The door closed again. I watched it for several seconds. That was the second shift. She wasn't ready to stand beside me. But she could no longer stand against me. Grandpa opened the final drawer of his desk. Inside sat a thick envelope sealed with dark blue wax. This stays here. I noticed my name written across the front. When do I read it? After everything ends. I nodded. I won't touch it. He placed the envelope beside the safe. Then he looked at me carefully. You've changed. I've stopped apologizing. Good. Another knock came. This one wasn't polite. Daniel? Ethan. His voice was sharper now. We need to talk. Grandpa looked at me. Your choice. I opened the door. Daniel stood in the hallway with his hands in his pockets. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. Can we have a minute? We're having one. He glanced past me toward the paperwork. I figured. What do you want? He lowered his voice. I know Grandpa trusts you. He does. That's dangerous. For who? He stepped closer. His expensive cologne couldn't hide the tension in his breathing. You have an opportunity here. I'm listening. You don't have to destroy this family. I stared at him. I'm not destroying anything. Think carefully. He smiled again. If accusations start flying. He looked toward the living room. People pick sides. I know. You'll lose everyone. I shook my head slowly. No. His smile faded. They already left years ago. He took another step. You don't understand. Then explain. He hesitated. Then quietly said, some things are bigger than being right. I answered just as quietly. No. Some things are bigger than staying comfortable. His jaw tightened. For the first time, the confidence I had seen all week disappeared. Without another word, he walked away. I watched him return to the family gathering. His shoulders looked heavier than before. Not because he felt guilty, because for the first time, his warning hadn't worked. I closed the study door. Behind me, Grandpa rested one hand on the safe. They've moved from insults. He looked toward the hallway. To threats. I nodded. And that means? He closed the safe with a slow, solid click. It means we're getting very close to the truth. The house felt different after Daniel walked away. Not quieter. Heavier. Like every wall had been holding its breath for years. Grandpa looked at the closed study door. Sit down. I pulled out a chair. He remained standing beside the safe. You've been asking the wrong question. I frowned. I thought I was asking who stole from you. No. He folded his hands. You've been asking who took the money. Aren't they the same? They're connected. But they aren't the beginning. The room became still. He opened one of the oldest folders. Instead of financial papers, there were letters. Dozens of them. Each one addressed to me. My chest tightened. What are these? I wrote one every birthday. I stared at him. You never gave them to me. I wanted to. So why didn't you? He looked away. Because someone always convinced me it wasn't the right time. I picked up the first envelope. My name was written in Grandpa's careful handwriting. The ink had faded with age. I don't understand. You will. He nodded toward the chair. Read the first paragraph. I carefully unfolded the letter. My fingers shook slightly. The paper carried the faint scent of cedar from the safe. Dear Ethan, today you turn 18. I hope you never let anyone convince you that your worth depends on matching someone else's life. I stopped reading. My throat felt dry. I needed this back then. I know. I looked up. You never sent it. I tried. He walked toward the window. Rebecca said you wouldn't appreciate it. I stared at him. What? She told me you were angry with me. I was never angry. I learned that later. The words landed like stones. She lied. Yes. I opened another letter. Age 21. Another. Age 24. Every single one encouraged me. Every single one reminded me that failure wasn't permanent. Every single one had stayed locked inside the safe instead of reaching me. I lowered the stack. They kept us apart. They tried. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I swallowed. I thought you stopped believing in me. Grandpa's eyes filled with regret. I never stopped. Those 4 words healed something I hadn't realized was still broken. For years, I'd believed my grandfather had quietly agreed with everyone else. Now I knew he'd been silenced. Not by force, by manipulation. I leaned back. So why did they need me to fail? Grandpa answered immediately. Because success would have exposed them. I frowned. I still don't follow. He pulled another folder from the safe. This one contained estate documents, original wills, updated versions, legal notes. My first will divided everything equally. He pointed toward the signatures. Then, I changed it. When? 8 years ago. Why? Character. I looked at him. You've always said inheritance should reward responsibility. It should. So? He smiled sadly. I intended to leave you stewardship of the family foundation. I blinked. Me? Yes. Not Daniel? No. My mind raced. Did anyone know? I told Rebecca. Silence. Then everything connected. The insults. The stories. The fake concern. The constant attacks on my reputation. It wasn't random. It was preparation. They needed everyone to believe I couldn't handle responsibility. Grandpa nodded once. Exactly. If the family thought I was reckless, they would never question changing the will. The room suddenly felt smaller. Years of humiliation weren't personal entertainment. They were strategy. Daniel hadn't mocked me because he enjoyed it. He mocked me because every joke reinforced the story. Every insult became another brick in a wall built around my name. I closed my eyes. The memories flooded back. Family vacations where I wasn't included in financial conversations. Holiday dinners where Daniel answered questions directed at me. Relatives who praised him before criticizing me. It had never been spontaneous. It had been rehearsed. I whispered, my whole life. Grandpa finished the sentence. Became their evidence. A knock interrupted us. This time it was gentle. Mark stepped inside. He looked nervous. I'm sorry. Grandpa nodded. Come in. Mark closed the door behind him. I need to tell you something. He looked at me first, then Grandpa. I've stayed quiet too long. Grandpa motioned toward the empty chair. Mark didn't sit. When I was 23, he rubbed his hands together. Rebecca asked me to organize old family files. Neither of us interrupted. I found one of Grandpa's earlier wills. He looked ashamed. It listed Ethan as trustee. I stared at him. You knew? I only knew for one day. What happened? Rebecca took it. What did she say? She smiled. His voice dropped. She said Grandpa had changed his mind because Ethan wasn't dependable anymore. I asked quietly. And you believed her? I did. He looked down. I didn't ask Grandpa. Why not? I thought. He took a slow breath. I thought she was protecting him. The guilt on his face was real. I was wrong. Grandpa stepped closer. What changed? Mark looked directly at me. The loan documents, the bank records, the signatures. I realized every story I'd ever heard about Ethan came from the same two people. He paused. I never noticed that before. Neither had most of the family. Manipulation works best when one voice becomes everyone's memory. Mark reached into his jacket. I found something yesterday. He handed Grandpa a flash drive. I kept this because I didn't know what it meant. Grandpa looked surprised. You still have it? I forgot about it. What is it? Mark answered me. It's a backup from the office computer Rebecca used years ago. My pulse quickened. Have you looked at it? No. I was afraid. Grandpa nodded. Thank you. Mark finally sat down. I don't want anything. I only want to stop lying to myself. Grandpa placed the flash drive beside the other evidence. You've done the right thing. Mark looked relieved. Then he stood. As he reached the door, he stopped. He turned toward me. I owe you more than an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. He swallowed hard. I laughed when Daniel called you the family failure. He couldn't meet my eyes. I never asked whether it was true. I nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. He left quietly. The room fell silent again. Grandpa picked up the flash drive. We may not even need this, but we'll check it anyway. I smiled. Receipts. He smiled back. Always. I connected the drive to the laptop. Folders appeared on the screen. Old spreadsheets, scanned documents, email archives. Then one folder caught my attention. Draft statements. I opened it. Inside were typed summaries. Each one described a different family member. Daniel, Olivia, Mark, Rebecca. Then, mine. I clicked it open. The words made my stomach turn. Ethan struggles with responsibility. Recommend reducing future financial authority. Encourage family to avoid lending money. Present concerns as compassion rather than criticism. I stared at the screen. This, Grandpa leaned closer, was a script. Every family conversation. Every fake expression of concern. Every repeated story. Someone had literally written talking points. My heartbeat pounded. They rehearsed my reputation. Grandpa closed the laptop. They manufactured it. I sat in stunned silence. For years, I'd believed I was defending myself against opinions. I had actually been defending myself against a campaign. Outside the study window, I saw relatives gathering on the lawn, laughing, drinking coffee, waiting for Grandpa's announcement. None of them knew the truth was only a few feet away. Grandpa walked back to the safe. He rested his hand on the heavy steel door. Tomorrow. He looked directly at me. This safe opens in front of everyone. I took a slow breath. Are you ready? He smiled. I've been ready for years. I looked toward the family outside. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of facing them. I finally understood why they'd spent so many years calling me the family failure. They were never trying to describe who I was. They were trying to decide who would inherit the right to speak for the Carter family. And tomorrow, their story was going to meet the truth. The next morning arrived without rain. Sunlight poured through the tall windows of Grandpa's living room. Everything looked peaceful. Nothing was. Every member of the Carter family had accepted Grandpa's invitation. No birthdays. No holidays. Just one sentence in the message. Be here at 10. This concerns every one of you. By 10 o'clock, every chair was filled. Daniel sat closest to Grandpa. Rebecca sat beside him. Olivia quietly stirred her coffee. Mark stayed near the back of the room. My mother chose a chair beside me. That alone told me something had changed. She didn't say a word. She simply sat beside her son. Grandpa entered carrying the brass key. Nobody noticed it except me. He didn't greet anyone. He simply stood in front of the fireplace. I've asked you here because my time is becoming more valuable. Rebecca smiled gently. Dad, don't talk like that. I'll speak however I choose. The smile vanished. Daniel leaned forward. We're listening. Grandpa nodded. I've spent years deciding what each of you should inherit. Every eye focused on him. He slowly walked toward the painting. Without saying another word, he lifted it from the wall. Gasps spread through the room. The steel safe appeared. Nobody spoke. Daniel frowned. I didn't know that existed. Grandpa looked at me. Ethan. I stood. He handed me the brass key. Open it. The room watched silently. My heartbeat echoed inside my chest. The key slid into the lock. Then came the sound. Click. A heavy metallic sound. Louder than anyone breathing. I slowly pulled the safe door open. Rows of folders filled the shelves. Rebecca's face lost all color. Daniel shifted in his chair. Grandpa reached inside. He removed one thick binder, then another, then a metal box. Finally, he placed several sealed envelopes on the table. He looked around the room. "You've all spent years asking what was inside this safe." Nobody answered. "It was never money." Daniel laughed nervously. "So what is all this?" Grandpa answered calmly. "The truth." Silence. He opened the first binder. "Ethan." "Yes?" "Read page 4. I opened it. It contained copies of Grandpa's original will. Highlighted in yellow was one paragraph. "Family Foundation Trustee, Ethan Carter." I looked toward Daniel. His confident smile disappeared. Rebecca spoke first. "That draft was changed." Grandpa nodded. "It was. Because Ethan wasn't prepared." "No." His voice stayed perfectly steady. "I changed it because I discovered someone was trying to force me to." Nobody moved. Grandpa opened another folder. "These are my bank records." He handed copies to everyone. "The signatures on these transfers are forged." Daniel immediately shook his head. "That proves nothing." Grandpa calmly laid 2 signature pages side by side. "Then explain the differences." Daniel looked. He said nothing. Rebecca finally spoke. "Maybe the bank made mistakes." Grandpa opened another folder. "These came from 3 separate handwriting experts." He placed the reports on the table. "Everyone reached the same conclusion." Forged. The word seemed to fill the room. Nobody argued. "Not yet." Grandpa looked at me. "The recordings." I connected my phone to the television. One tap. The audio began. Daniel's voice filled the room. "You're the family failure." Laughter. Rebecca. "We're only worried about you." Daniel again. "He'll never succeed." The recording ended. Nobody looked at me. They looked at Daniel. He quickly stood. "That was one dinner." I answered calmly. "No." I opened another recording. The whispered hallway conversation. Rebecca's voice. "This wasn't supposed to happen." Daniel. "What if he knows?" "I handled it." Silence followed. Heavy. Complete. Daniel looked toward Rebecca. She avoided his eyes. Grandpa opened another folder. "Now!" He lifted several birthday letters. "I wrote these for Ethan every year." My mother frowned. "I've never seen those." "You weren't supposed to." Grandpa looked at Rebecca. "She made sure of that." Rebecca's lips trembled. "I never." Grandpa interrupted her. "You told me Ethan hated me." I felt my mother's hand tighten around mine. "You told Ethan I stopped believing in him." Rebecca's shoulders dropped. "I was trying to keep peace." Grandpa shook his head slowly. "You were creating distance." Then he handed everyone copies of the email draft Mark had recovered. The room quietly read. "Present concerns as compassion rather than criticism. Reduce Ethan's influence. Question his financial judgment." My mother looked up first. Her eyes filled with tears. "My God." She looked directly at Rebecca. "You wrote this?" Rebecca couldn't answer. Daniel stepped forward. "She didn't mean." Grandpa raised one hand. Daniel stopped talking. "I haven't finished." He opened the metal box. Inside were flash drives, voice recordings, original wills, signed affidavits, notarized statements. Every single document dated. Every page authenticated. "I knew someone would eventually deny everything." He looked around the room. "So I documented everything." Daniel rubbed both hands across his face. "This is insane." "No," Grandpa answered. "This is organized." Daniel finally looked at me. "Ethan, His voice had changed completely. I was protecting the family. I met his eyes. No, you were protecting yourself. He looked desperate. You don't understand. Then explain. He swallowed. If Grandpa left you in charge. So? You would have uncovered the transfers. There is. Nobody interrupted. Daniel closed his eyes. We borrowed money. Grandpa corrected him. You stole it. We meant to replace it. You never did. It got out of control. When? Years ago. How many years? Daniel looked down. 9. 9 years. Almost an entire decade. Grandpa calmly closed the binder. You spent 9 years convincing this family Ethan was irresponsible. Daniel whispered. I needed everyone looking at him. Rebecca finally broke. I never wanted this. Grandpa looked at her. You wanted influence. I wanted stability. You wanted control. She lowered her head. I thought if Ethan inherited everything. She couldn't continue. I quietly finished the sentence. You couldn't. She didn't deny it. My mother slowly stood. She looked at Rebecca. I defended you. Rebecca remained silent. I defended Daniel. Still nothing. I doubted my own son. The words echoed through the room. Then she turned toward me. I'm sorry. I nodded once. I know. That was enough. No speech. No drama. Just truth. Grandpa reached into the final folder. He removed a signed legal document. As of yesterday. He placed it on the table. My estate has been amended. Daniel looked up quickly. What does that mean? It means neither you nor Rebecca will oversee any family assets. Rebecca closed her eyes. Grandpa continued. The family foundation. He looked directly at me. Will be managed by Ethan. Daniel took one slow breath, then sat back down. He had no argument left. Only consequences. Grandpa handed me the final document. I've already notified my attorney. I looked through the pages. Everything was complete. Legally filed. Witnessed. Nothing could be changed. The safe stood open behind Grandpa. No longer hiding secrets. Only proving them. He closed the heavy steel door. The metallic sound echoed across the room. This safe was never built to protect money. He rested his hand against the cold steel. It was built to protect the truth until the right moment. For the first time in 10 years. Nobody in that room called me the family failure. Because there was no story left to hide behind. Only the truth they had spent years trying to lock away. Nobody rushed to leave. The living room remained silent. Not because anyone was waiting for another argument. Because there wasn't one left. Truth has a strange way of ending conversations. Daniel stayed seated. His shoulders were no longer squared with confidence. He looked smaller somehow. Rebecca quietly folded the copy of the forged documents. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. For the first time in my life, she had nothing left to manipulate. Grandpa slowly returned the binders to the safe. He didn't hurry. Every folder slid back onto the shelf exactly where it belonged. Years of careful preparation. Years of waiting. Years of patience. Finished. He closed the safe. The metal door settled into place with one final click. Then he turned toward me. Ethan. Yes? The envelope. I remembered it immediately. The blue wax seal. My name written across the front. Grandpa reached into the safe one last time. He handed it to me. This belongs to you now. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I looked at him. You told me not to open it until everything ended. It has. My hands hesitated. Then I carefully broke the wax seal. Inside, there was only one handwritten letter. No legal papers. No money. No property deeds. Just one folded page. I unfolded it slowly. Grandpa smiled. "Read it." I nodded. My voice was quieter than I expected. "Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means the truth finally reached you." I stopped for a second. The room remained completely still. I continued. "I know there were years when you believed I had given up on you. I never did." My throat tightened. I took another breath. "The greatest inheritance I can leave isn't my home. It isn't my savings. It isn't the Carter name. It's the certainty that your character survived people who tried to destroy it." I looked down for a moment. The words blurred slightly. Not because I couldn't read them, because my eyes had filled with tears. I continued. "Money can be stolen. Reputation can be attacked. But integrity always finds its way home." The final sentence stood alone. "Never measure yourself by the voices that benefit from your doubt." Silence. No one moved. I carefully folded the letter. Grandpa smiled. "That," he tapped the envelope, "is the real inheritance." I couldn't speak. For years, I thought I wanted an apology, or justice, or revenge. Standing there, I realized what I'd really wanted. To know my grandfather had believed in me all along. Nothing else compared. My mother quietly walked over. She looked at the letter, then at me. "I missed so much." I nodded. "We both did." She reached out slowly. "Can I hug my son?" I didn't answer. I simply stepped forward. She wrapped her arms around me. The embrace felt awkward at first. Years of distance don't disappear in seconds, but they can begin to heal. She whispered, "I'm proud of you." Those words would have meant everything 10 years earlier. Today, they still mattered. "Thank you." When she stepped back, Mark approached. "I've already spoken to Grandpa's attorney." I looked surprised. "So soon?" He nodded. "I'm giving them every email and backup I have." "Why?" "Because fixing the truth is more important than protecting my pride." I smiled. "That's enough." He extended his hand. This time, I shook it. Olivia slowly walked over next. She looked embarrassed. I laughed. "I know. I repeated things about you that I never checked." "I know. I'm sorry." I looked at her for a moment. "I hope next time you ask questions before believing answers." She nodded. "I will." That was enough. Forgiveness didn't require pretending nothing happened. It only required honesty. Daniel remained alone near the fireplace. Eventually he stood. He walked toward me. Every confident step I'd known my entire life was gone. "I don't expect forgiveness." "No. I just—" He struggled to finish. "I spent so long trying to become the person Grandpa trusted." He laughed bitterly. "That I became someone he couldn't." I answered quietly. "You always thought trust was something you could win by removing competition." He lowered his head. "You were never my competition. You made me one." He nodded. "I know." Neither of us spoke again. Sometimes silence is the only ending two people deserve. Rebecca finally approached Grandpa. She looked older than she had only an hour earlier. "I love this family," Grandpa answered gently. "I believe you." She looked relieved. Then he continued, "But you love control more." She closed her eyes. "I don't know how I became this person." Grandpa sighed. "It happened one small choice at a time." No anger. No shouting. Just truth. She quietly left the room. No one stopped her. No one followed. The front door closed softly. That was the end of her part in our story. A week later, the attorneys completed every change. The stolen funds were formally documented. Legal proceedings began. The family foundation officially passed into my care. Grandpa insisted on attending the first board meeting. He sat quietly while I presented new transparency policies, independent audits, open financial reporting, multiple approval signatures. Nobody objected. After the meeting ended, Grandpa and I walked through the foundation's garden. Summer flowers swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. He stopped beside an old oak tree. "You know," he smiled, "I worried you'd become bitter. I almost did. What changed?" I looked toward the sky. "I realized proving them wrong wasn't the goal. What was? Becoming the man they kept pretending I could never be." Grandpa laughed softly. "I knew you'd figure it out." Weeks turned into months. People slowly stopped calling me the family failure. Not because I demanded respect, because lies eventually run out of places to hide. The recording stayed locked away. The forged papers remained with the attorneys. The safe remained closed. Its job was finally over. One afternoon, I asked Grandpa something that had stayed in my mind since the birthday dinner. "Why didn't you stop them sooner?" He looked across the lake behind his house. "The truth spoken too early sounds like an excuse." He smiled. "The truth spoken with proof becomes history." I never forgot that. Years later, visitors still noticed the old safe behind the painting. Sometimes they'd ask what was inside. I'd smile. "Nothing important anymore." Because the most valuable thing it ever protected wasn't paper. It was timing. And because one old man had the patience to wait. An entire lifetime of lies collapsed in a single morning. If you've ever been judged before anyone knew the truth, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Someone out there may need to know they're not alone. And if you believe patience, evidence, and integrity will always outlast deception, subscribe to The Last Receipt, where every story reminds us that the strongest revenge isn't destroying a lie, it's surviving long enough for the truth to destroy it.